Yes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does, in fact, hold up. You may be wondering, why is this Gen Z rocker? Why is the king of rock and roll saying it holds up? Clearly, I saw it. I didn't like the movie. Well, that's because your opinions are wrong. It's because you, as a person, are invalid. Your opinions are invalid. No, I'm just kidding. That might be true, though. Actually, I have no clue. But what we're here to do today is get you informed on what I thought about the movie. And did I like it? Did I not like it? What's up with that, right? So whether you're a longtime rocker, trying to figure out what Gen Z thinks about rock and roll and culture, man, and everything like that, dude, or you're like Gen Z yourself and you want to know, like, okay, I don't want to hear like some boomers or some, like some old people tell me a movie's bad or good. Cause I don't know. But you're like, what if I heard Gen Z? What if I heard some of my age with my kind of like thoughts in like growing up? And then they might have a different perspective that's probably way more useful to me if I'm trying to figure out if I like a movie or not than, some 45-year-old, 85-year-old dude. So we're breaking down Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But first, go and send this video to a friend. Just kidding. This, is also a podcast. This is a video podcast. This is The Rock Show with Connor Farrell. So I don't know if you know what that is. I don't know if you know who Connor Farrell is, but he's the greatest rock star of all time, heir to the throne of rock and roll. Single-handedly, with the hands of many and everyone else in Gen Z, on the mission to bring back rock. Where did rock go? Where did it go? I don't know. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this movie, this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Oh, so I didn't get it until like you see basically the credits roll. I didn't get the name of this movie. I didn't get what was going on until the credits rolled, and then it all clicked, and I went, "Oh, that was good. That was good. That was like sweet. That was a very like sweet movie." Despite the fact that there is like like horribly violent things that occur in this movie, right? There's lots of like blood, not particularly gore, but just like, there's bloody stuff that goes down. And it's 3 hours. The thing is, really, here's how the way this movie works. They cast Sydney Sweeney, and then they covered up. Let's see, yeah. Sydney Sweeney does not appear on the cast on Google. You type in Google, you type in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There is 6 people per line, right? Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Margaret Qualley, and then you've got Elvis, you've got Austin Butler, you've got Elvis, and then you've got Dakota Fanning. Oh, heard that name a lot. She was fine. And then you got a bunch of other people. Al Pacino's in it, Kurt Russell's in it. That stuff was fun. But way down at 3 1/3, 3.5. She is the 21st person on the casting. Our queen, Sydney Sweeney. So now we're gonna hit this. For everyone who's unaware, Sydney Sweeney is famous for, in the same year, came out a show called Euphoria in 2019. And this is very funny, but Sydney Sweeney is, when you go to her Google and you click it, right, it goes, people also search for, right? So outside of her, like, co-stars, the first result is Billie Eilish. And if you guys aren't aware, the only reason these two women are both, put together in the same group, you're like, this chick was on a show called Euphoria, where it was about like, I don't know, I didn't watch it, but what, like high school and college girls being like, ooh, I want to sleep with guys who do drugs and go to parties. And they're like, I'm so horny. Horny girl show. And Sydney Sweeney herself got famous for having massive knockers. See, this is the only complaint I have with the movie. they took the it girl, Sydney Sweeney, and they covered her up and they made her look as frumpy as possible to make her just one of the generic hippie girls. And I can't blame them, but come on. I mean, I guess maybe they didn't know that this was going to be, like the biggest, female actress of her generation. I think she's Gen Z, yeah. What is she? She's probably like 27 now. It's also funny too. They're like, oh, let's get this like 25-year-old chick to play a 16-year-old with massive boobs on Euphoria. Yeah. Uh, oh no, she's 26. Okay, so they got her 5 years ago at 21. Okay, well, fine. But still, yeah, they covered up Sydney Sweeney in the movie, and that's my only complaint. Anyways, that's the end of the review. No, no, but basically, it's yeah, I didn't get the movie. I didn't get what was going on until I got to the very end credits and it rolls, and it goes Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and you realize, oh, this movie's a fairy tale, like in the truest sense. It's like it's a fairy tale, like Hansel and Gretel or something like that. It's not supposed to be what happened. And I don't mean that in the sense that like it's not historically accurate. I just mean in the sense that it is a fairy tale. It's just like, oh, like what if these people existed? And then of course they throw in like the Charles Manson stuff and Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, and they throw that stuff in. And I don't really know too much about that, but I'm gonna spoil the movie just because it's funny. It's just a good movie happens, and then right at the last like 20-30 minute mark, all the stuff. They just introduce these characters. They have them set up. They have them do a bunch of stuff. You get to learn a little bit about their characters. Like you get to learn about Sharon Tate, even though nothing happens with her character. You just get to like see her like enjoying her like day to day life. She goes to a movie theater and she's like, "Look, it's me. I'm in the picture." And the people at the theater are like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm in the movie that you're showing." And they're like, "What?" And then she goes and watches the movie. And then when it gets to her lines, she's like, "Oh, I hope they laugh. I hope they laugh at my part." And and then the people do. They like laugh. They're like, "Oh, that was funny." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I did a good job. They laughed at me part. I'm funny. I'm nice. Hey, my name is Margot Robbie. Hey, it's good. I'm Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie. Ooh, this is good." And yeah, that's basically the extent to which they give her anything to do in the movie, though. And then it's just Brad Pitt and Leo being guys alive in the year 1969. And they just kind of show, like Leo is just, a guy who kind of like plays the bad guy uh, in like television shows and stuff, miscellaneous like Western shows. I think he used to be, well, I guess I don't know, I wasn't really clear on this, but I think like 10 years ago, he was the lead on a cowboy show and he was the good guy. But then he went to go do a couple like big movies, and he did like two or three of them, and people liked him, but his career didn't really take off. And so then he went back to TV, but they wouldn't give him the lead on the show; they gave him the bad guy, and so he would just be the bad guy on a bunch of different TV shows. And so at the beginning of the movie, Al Pacino comes in. He goes like, "Hey, yo, boss, you're playing bad guys now, eh? I thought you were a big movie star. I like the movies. I watched the movies. They weren't good, eh? Yeah, like now you what? You a bad guy on TV shows. What's gonna happen? They see you get your bummy kicked. They see you getting your booty kicked for 20 years straight on the bad guy in the TV show. They're gonna be like, hey man, we don't want to watch your movies no more. You're a loser. You're a chump. He's like, you want to be a hero? You come with me. I put you in some spaghetti westerns. We go to Italy. We do some Italian rip-off movies, okay? Come on, come on. You like money, I give you money, okay? You like fame, I give you fame. And Leo goes, oh my god, my career is going down the drain. Oh no. And then he goes outside and he's crying, and Brad Pitt's like, what do you, stop crying. This is 1969. You're a successful dude. You're not allowed to cry in public. How dare you? Don't cry in front of the Mexicans. I think that's the exact line. Don't cry. Like Brad Pitt's like, don't embarrass me in front of the Mexicans. Dude, these Mexican guys who are the valet, they're really cool. Don't embarrass me in front of Juan Julio. And so yeah, that's basically no, but basically, so they go from there, and then you just watch like Leo go like work on set, and Brad Pitt is his stunt double, and so he's kind of like, oh, if your career is in the toilet, like I guess we're kind of done here then, right? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, yeah, maybe. I hope so. I hope my career's okay. Oh man, I really hope I have a career after that. Oh man. Oh God, Brad. Leo figures out. That's what Leo. That's kind of his thing for the movie. The whole movie. The whole movie. He's like, huh, I guess. Oh, no. And then he like goes to set the next day, and like he's like, hey Brad Pitt, the director doesn't like you because apparently Brad Pitt killed his wife, or at least that's what everyone thinks. He killed his wife and got away with it. Um, and so they show you like a little flashback thing where he's sitting on a boat with a harpoon gun, just like in his lap, right? Just kind of pointed out. And then she walks right in front of it as she's just like laying into him, like, you suck, everything, I hate you. You're the worst husband in the world. Why would anyone ever want to marry you? Oh my God, you're so awful. And they're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. And you just see his hands on the trigger, right? And it's pointed right at her. He's just sitting there. So you're like, I don't know. Did he kill her? I don't know. Doesn't really matter, but apparently that's a rumor going around. And everyone thinks Brad Pitt killed his wife. So the director of the TV show that Leonardo DiCaprio is playing the bad guy on, it's a pilot. So they're like, oh my God, we're so excited to have a professional involved. Anyways, they think Brad Pitt killed his wife. And so that director's like, yeah, I'm not going to hire him to be the stunt double. We'll get another person. And so Brad Pitt goes to work on the antenna at Leonardo DiCaprio's house. And then I don't think much else happened with Brad Pitt. Oh no, here's what happens. He drives around. He thinks about, like, what if I did try and go to set and to get a job today, even though Leonardo told me not to? And Leonardo da Vinci told me not to. And then he has this whole flash forward sequence of him like at the set, and he gets in a fight with Bruce Lee, and then the director's wife comes over and's like, you killed your bloody wife. You killed your fucking wife. Get off the set, mate. Oh no, you threw Bruce Lee into my car. You fucking dingo, you threw Bruce Lee into my car. Why'd you do that? You threw Bruce Lee Bruce, not the other Bruce, not Jenner. Bruce Jenner was probably, I don't even know if Bruce Jenner was like famous yet, probably just doing track somewhere. And so yeah, Brad Pitt throws Bruce Lee. I almost said Bradley throws Bruce Pitt. Bruce Lee gets thrown into the director's wife's car by Brad Pitt, who murdered his wife allegedly. And the wife of the director in Brad Pitt's flash forward sequence says, get off set, you're fired. So none of that happened, but it was very fun. It was very fun. It was very just kind of like, yeah, what would have happened? And there's certain points in the movie where they do little cuts. It was mainly the beginning when when Leonardo DiCaprio is talking to Al Pacino, who tells him his career is falling apart before he like starts going, I'm crying. And Brad Pitt's like, don't cry in front of Mexicans, yo. That's like whack as heck. Uh, Before that happens, like there's these cuts, and Quentin Tarantino purposely does like cuts that look like that look like a movie, like look like an old movie, but like kind of like, oh, you're like, okay, and he like does these, and the audio jumps are like the hat's different or people are like sitting different. It might have been a different spot of the movie, but I think it was towards the beginning, and then that happens like once or twice in the beginning, but then throughout the rest of the movie, it just turns into a normal kind of movie. So some of that like more like not breaking the fourth wall, but untrustworthy narrator, that kind of stuff starts to like go away after a while. And so that was really fun in the beginning, and I was really hoping they would keep that element up. They didn't really, so it's fine, it's just fine. But that kind of stuff was cool. It made you go like, oh, we're in on the joke with Quentin Tarantino. And then the flash forward, Brad Pitt's got a dog. He lives behind a drive-in theater in whatever like it was called like Radio City or like something like that, or like Circuit City. I don't know. But he lived out in like somewhere outside of LA, La La Land. I would watch this over La La Land, that's for sure. Like La La Land, honestly, if you're talking about movies that are like LA is so cool, man, LA is so cool. This is a way more enjoyable movie. La La Land was kind of like sappy, like, well, they're in love, but like maybe not. Maybe they're gonna go different ways with their career, and then like they're not in love, and like that's okay because they like had their careers that went different ways. You're like, what does? I don't care. I don't care. At least this movie doesn't pretend it's like gonna go somewhere like La La Land did. What this movie does is I'm fixing my hair. I'm looks maxing, guys. Don't you get it? I'm on the bulk right now, so I don't have my Sigma jawline. I don't have that right now, but I can work on my hair. I always had difficulty styling my hair, but started doing this where I would take while my hair is towel dry. I would throw. I think I've got like a Veda, whatever they got, like a pomade or something, or like a molding clay, grooming clay, a Veda grooming clay, and I would take a little bit of it. And apparently, what you're supposed to do is you don't really want to get it on the roots. You kind of want to get like so you would like put a little bit on your fingers, you'd rub it together, and you kind of like, after so here's would be wet, I would towel dry. Then I would take my comb, I go comb, 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 comb. I would go all the way back, all the way back, all the way back, find the cut here, and then to the left, starting from back here, I would go kind of like that way, where they go to the left side, starting where my part would end when you go towards the back of my head. And then I would part it over to the side, and then I would start on the left side though, and just go straight back so that when the part happens, eventually it kind of ends up that way. Because if I go all the way left, my hair is going to fall in front of my face. So I was like, okay, we're going to go back first, and then we do this. And so once I've combed it, and it's kind of where it's going to be, then you get a little bit of pomade, you rub it on the fingertips, and you kind of get like the ends, the edges of things, right? Get a little bit on the side, just really kind of like just lightly put it in there. And I did that maybe once or twice with the grooming clay, not a pomade. I said pomade. Who cares? Anyways, speaking of good hair, we're talking about Austin Butler, who didn't, I don't think, had good hair in this movie, but he does in Elvis because you need to have the hair to be Elvis. It was funny, you did see people wearing kind of like Elvis type suits and stuff, and I know that Elvis kind of wore that big getup because he was a big fan of the DC Comics hero Shazam, recently played by Zachary Levi. Levi. Zachary Levi in the DCU. He's probably going to get recast by James Gunn, even though he was pretty good as Shazam, but I think he might want to do something different with Shazam, or maybe James Gunn, who's doing the new DC stuff, doesn't want to do Shazam right away. And so when he does do Shazam, he'd rather have someone younger, so he could play it for longer. I don't know. Maybe all actors will be AI in 20 years. So, well, in 20 years, probably, maybe 15. Um, but yeah, so what is up with Austin Butler here? What they do is basically Brad Pitt's on the roof. He has the flashbacks like, what if I went to work on the film set? And then he's like, oh yeah, I would have gotten into a fight with Bruce Lee. I would have thrown him into the wife's car. And then the director's wife would have been like, get him out of here. The director would be like, get out of here. And then I would be back on the roof. So he's like, okay, I'm on the roof. I'm fixing the thing. And then he goes, he's like, let me drive around town. Sharon Tate goes to the theater and watches herself in the movie and giggles, right? Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie goes, giggle, 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 giggle. Ah, giggle, giggle. And Brad Pitt goes around. He's like, "What if I found me a hippie girl?" And this hippie girl, prior to this, so first thing that happens, they don't show it till later, is he buys an LSD dipped cigarette dipped in LSD from some hippie chick. Then another hippie chick entices him, and she's like, "Why don't you give me a ride back to my plantation?" That's not what she said, but she said, "Give me to whatever the old like movie studio up in like the good part of town." He's kind of like, "What the hell are you doing in a movie studio?" And he's like, I used to make the Western there. That's where we used to do the show with Leo like 8 years ago. We did the show there, and we did that show for like a decade. So he's like, "What the hell?" I was like, "What are you doing living there?" And she was like, "I live there with all my hippie friends." And he's like, "I don't know. This sounds like Charles Manson murder time." He's like, "This is sus." And then she's like, "Hey, you want me to like suck your dick while you're driving?" And he's like, "No." Well, he's like, "How old are you?" And she's like, old enough to have intercourse with you. And he's like, "Let me see some ID." And I was watching this movie with my mother, and perfect mother son movie. And I was like, "See, mom," I'm like, "That's me." I'm like, ID. I'm like, "I ain't catching the case." My parole officer told me never again. No, but no, but really, you're like, it was just so funny because Brad Pitt's just sitting there like, I have not gone to jail for like whatever 45, 50 years at this point. He's like, "You think I want to go to jail because some rando chick was like, 'Hey, can I suck your dick?'" He's like, "No." And so then, of course, she's like, "Well, I don't have an ID." And you're like, "Okay, yeah, well, you're not 18 then." And then they go back. They go back to this whatever. Let's Google. How old was this lady? Margaret Qualley. She played this hippie chick, Pussycat one. She's 29. So 5 years ago, that would have made her 24. And a year before that, she's 23 when they were probably filming in 2018. So she was 23. The idea that a 23-year-old was 17, I guess you could pull that off. Um, I mean, she didn't look like, yeah. If you would have told me she was 23, I'd be like, "Yeah, I get it." She kind of looked a little emaciated, so it made it like easier to be like, okay, maybe she's, I don't know, not that old or something. But Brad Pitt's like, "No, you're not doing that." They go to the hippie place. He's like, "I need to check this out. I know the guy who used to run that place, George, who owns the ranch." He's like, "Let me go check on my buddy George. I hope these hippies didn't kill him." And he goes, it's all gross, it's all creepy, it's like Children of the Corn, it's like super like messed up and weird and gross. And he's like, "Okay." And he goes to the hippie place. And then he's like, "Wow." And then there's like only two guys there because Charles Manson and the other people went up to Santa Barbara, probably to go kill people. Anyways, he's here. He's like, what's happening?" Sees Austin Butler. He's like, "My name's Tex. I'm from Corpus Christi." No, not from Corpus Christi. He's from some random place. And Brad Pitt said, "Well, I was in Houston once. I was in the chain gang. Never going to Houston again." I assumed that chain gang was referring to some sort of prison arrangement where he was in prison. And that's why they had him in a chain with other people. And they were the gang of people in a chain. And this is in chains together, a gang of people in chains together. So that's what I'm presuming happened. Anyways, here's real talk. Here's real talk. What happens? He goes in. He's like, "Okay, buddy boy, where's George?" And they're like, "George is asleep. Don't talk to George." It's like, "No, George is taking a nap. Don't mess with George." And he's like, "Okay, let me go see what's up with George." And then Sydney Sweeney's there, and they made her look like dumpy as hell. They frumpied her up, and I did not take kindly to that. Anyway, then they go and they put they go and he goes in, and this lady's like, "I don't think you should wake up George because we watch TV and I just fucked his brains out." And you're like, "Okay." And that was Dakota Fanning. And you're like, "What the heck?" George, and then you go in and you think George is dead, and then it's like, "No, I'm just like blind and old and tired." He's like, George, you okay? George is like, they're not taking advantage of me. He's like, I get laid. He's like, I get to bang this chick. She cooks food for me. I can't see. I'm an old dude. He's like, I don't care. He's like, these are the terms. It's well understood. He's like, I'm liking it. Okay, so you can bug off. Don't mess up a good thing for me. So Brad Pitt goes to leave, but there's a guy who rides the horse or whatever, who the only other guy there is a super hippie guy who stabbed Brad Pitt's tire, and he's like, beats him up and is like, fix my fucking tire. Smacks his face in a couple times, and then he's like, you're to fix my tire. And then Austin Butler's like, I need to come and save them because she was doing something else. And he's like, horse riding all the way back, ticks. And then by the time he gets there, though, Brad Pitt's gone and the tire was fixed. Anyways, then something happens with Leo. I don't remember what happens, but they go to Italy, and it's like 9 months later, or 6 months later, because it was February and then it was August. But what ends up happening is it goes then to, Leonardo DiCaprio did all these movies in Italy. He did a rip-off James Bond. He did a bunch of westerns. He did a western with the Spanish guy, not Spanish American, but an actual Spanish guy from Spain because they're in Italy. And then he comes back after getting married, but he did spend still most of his money on a lavish lifestyle while he was there. So he comes back with his wife, and Brad Pitt, his stunt double, is coming back with him. And it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to retire. I'm going to move into a small place with my wife, maybe do some stuff, but we're kind of done. The film career is over. Brad Pitt, you can leave. And to that, I got to title this recording, y'all. Got to know with this podcast. Once upon a tiempo in Hollywood. So basically, what happens is, whoop, whoop, wake up, wake up, wake up. It might be nighttime where you are, but you are awake now. Haha. Welcome to 184-481, The Sound. You're listening to Sound Hard, Rock Hard, The Sound. Anyways, welcome to Sound Hard, Rock Hard, The Sound, 449, The Valley's only rock hard sound hard. Sugar. That's a good one. Ain't that a good little ditty there, people on the podcast end of this, on the audio only listening end? Don't you like those noises of me drinking water? Now that you've clicked off, only the real fans are here. Okay, that's how we know it's good. This one's to weed out the phony balonies. Okay, maybe this is the first video I'm doing today. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I haven't got my rhythm going. Maybe I'm like thinking about my throat. I'm thinking about where am I positioning? Thinking about, am I looking into the camera? Am I looking at the reflection of myself in the camera? Where are we? You're like, I didn't know I was a camera. I knew I was the listener watching this video. You're like, what the heck? How is there a camera there? You're like, wait a minute. How are you looking at a reflection if you're looking at me? Wait, maybe the reflection is me. Maybe I'm the reflection that Connor was staring back at. You're like, maybe, whoa. Well, maybe we're all one and one is all and one is man. Yeah. And so Leo gets back and these hippies are there. And so Brad Pitt and Leo are like, let's get drunk. Let's have a good time. Let's celebrate the fact that our like 18 years of working together is over. Okay. And then at the same time, they're going out and getting drunk in the valley. Then Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski and the couple, which is like a Polish couple they're friends with who's staying with them, they also go out and have dinner. And so what happens is Margot Robbie and Roman Polanski and the rest of them get home at a reasonable hour, more like 10:30 p.m., and then they get ready for bed around midnight. But then Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio gets home at around 11:45. Brad Pitt has had this badass dog, by the way, this badass pit bull. Super lovey, cute. But he literally would be like, you don't get to eat. Like, super, you could tell he's got the pit bull so well trained. You don't know trained to do what. You just know that, like, when he goes to feed the pit bull, because they show you earlier in the movie, he comes back at, like, 11:30, right? And he does with the pit bull, he's basically like, okay. He's like, sit on the couch. Pitbull sits on the couch. He's like taking the food out. He puts it, and even if the pitbull whimpers a little bit, he's like, you don't get fed. The pitbull goes, ooh. And so what happens is you like see this like meticulous level of feeding. Anyways, so when they're back at the house now at the end of the movie, Sharon Tate and the neighbors, Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate are the neighbors. I should have mentioned that. Leonardo DiCaprio lives next door to them in the Hollywood Hills. That's a very important part. And this whole Rick Dalton is the character that Leonardo DiCaprio is playing. That character, I don't believe, is a real person that existed in history. And neither is Cliff Booth, who Brad Pitt is playing. Neither of those are real people. And so you can start to see this is where it's just like, it's a little fantasy. And these are the people on the poster, and these are the main characters of the movie. They're fairy tale characters, as you'll see in a second, because then Brad Pitt, they got back at 11:30. They're super drunk. Brad Pitt starts feeding his dog. Oh, no. He goes to take the dog for a walk. And so he takes the LSD cigarette that he bought 6 months earlier from the hippie chick before he went to their weird hippie compound to check on George, the guy who used to run the movie studio that they turned into the compound, who was being banged by Dakota Fanning, and George was blind. So that day, that cigarette he bought before them that's laced with LSD, he goes, oh, it's 11:30 on August 8th, whatever, 1969. He's like, this is a really good time now that I'm drunk to smoke that and take my dog for a walk. So he goes and does that. At the same time, Leonardo DiCaprio is super hammered, and at midnight, he starts making a giant thing of margaritas, totally hammered. Makes a giant thing of margaritas. Now, outside is Austin Butler and a couple other of these. It's Elvis and his other hippie folk. And they didn't have Sydney Sweeney, which is why I think I didn't watch the movie. If they would have made Sydney Sweeney the main character, I would have watched this movie a while ago. I've seen every movie Sydney Sweeney's in. Oh, that Sydney Sweeney, she just rubs my heart. And much more. But that's not the topic of today's video, because here's what's happening. Today's podcast, today's audio, visual, audio, visual, audio, visual, audio, visual, audio, visual, visual, no, wait, audio, wait, visual, visual, audio, audio, visual. That's not the point of today's audio visual experience. The point is the hippies, you've got Sharon Tate and you've got Roman Polanski, the neighbors, they're asleep, kind of doing their thing, going to bed, and or maybe they're making love, right? And Leonardo DiCaprio's Italian wife is asleep. Brad Pitt's out walking his dog in the neighborhood, and Leonardo DiCaprio is drinking a margarita. He made a giant blender full of margaritas and just drinking straight from it. And he hears the hippies pull their car up outside in the cul-de-sac where the two houses are. And he goes out. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's fucking midnight. Get the fuck out of here. He sees the hippies. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? Get out of here. He gets all up in Austin Butler's face. They drive away. They go back down the street where no one can hear them. And then one of the hippies is like, wait a minute, is that Rick Dalton? Is that Leonardo DiCaprio from the TV show? Oh my God, I love that TV show. I used to watch Bounty Law, where Leonardo DiCaprio played a bounty hunter like Django Bobo Fett. He's like the Mandalorian. Oh my God, I love this guy. And so what happens is, then they're like, well, who cares? Let's go kill some people. I'm like, yeah, let's go kill people. And then they go to go do that. And then there's four girls, or there's four people. One is, Elvis. And then the other three are random hippie chicks. And then they're walking up the hill because they parked the car at the bottom so that it wouldn't notify the people so they could sneak up. And the one hippie chick is like, hey, I left my knife in the car. Oh my God. And he's like, oh, go get it. And she's like, oh yeah, let me go get it. He's like, wait a minute. She's like, oh. And he's like, you're going to need the car keys. I locked it. And he's like, ah. So she throws in the keys and she gets in that car. She fucking drives away. So it's just the two chicks and the one guy, Elvis, right? Elvis has got a gun. The other chicks have knives. So what ends up happening? Brad Pitt gets home with his dog. He's tripping on acid and very drunk. A unique blend of being crossed, as the kids would refer to it. And what does Brad Pitt do? Well, Brad Pitt starts to feed his dog. And he hears his dog whimper. And then he gets over close to the dog. He's like, hey, I told you you're not going to get fed. And he goes, wait a minute. He's like, the dog's whimpering at the door. And so he takes a step back. Austin Butler comes in, and the one girl and the other girl comes in through the side. And he was like, okay. And he like stalls for time, starts talking to him. But then one of the girls goes and gets the Italian wife out of the bedroom. The whole time, Leonardo DiCaprio's got his headphones on, and he's listening to music, drinking margaritas in the pool. He doesn't know what's going on. And so what happens is Brad Pitt goes, go. And the dog goes and bites Austin Butler's hand, so the gun's gone, and then he bites him in the balls and is tearing him apart. At the same time, the one girl, I forget what happens, but basically it starts getting a good fight scene where Brad Pitt, you realize, like, oh, I know what this dog is trying to do. He throws a can that he had in his hand of dog food. He chucks it at the girl who was coming from the back, and she gets knocked out. And then he goes, dog. And the dog goes and starts tearing her a new one, starts killing her. And then Brad Pitt, I think, starts messing up Austin Butler. Forget what happens with that. But then, the Italian wife is fighting off the one girl, but then he sends the dog at her. And he gets in a fight with the one girl, and so Brad Pitt basically fights them all. He kills the Austin Butler guy, right, pretty much, and then he also kills the girl who came with him, but not without getting stabbed in the leg. The other girl who he threw the can of dog food at, who came from the back, she's kind of fine, and so she runs outside, and she's like, she's really messed up, and she's like, and she's like screaming in pain, and she can't really like see anything or figure anything out because the dog like bit off her nose, and so she's like running outside screaming, and Leonardo DiCaprio goes, "What the fuck? What the hell is this?" And so he gets out of the pool. She falls into the pool, but she's got the gun and she's shooting it in the air, and he's like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "Let me run away." And they set up earlier in the movie out of nowhere at the very beginning that Leonardo DiCaprio was in a movie where he killed Nazis using a flamethrower. And he talked about how he had trained to use the flamethrower. And it took him months to get good at it, but now he's an expert at using the flamethrower to kill things. So he goes into his tool shed, he gets his flamethrower, and he flamethrowers the last chick in the pool until she's burnt to a crisp and dead. And the police come, they take Brad Pitt to the hospital, the wife goes back to bed, the dog slips to the wife, and watches over her. Leonardo DiCaprio's like, woo, that was a night. And then Roman Polanski's buddy and the people next door come down, they're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, oh, nothing much. How about you? And he's like, what just happened at your house? That sounded crazy. And he's like, well, I flamethrower this chick. They're like, what? No way. And basically found out that Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate knew that he was the neighbor, and they were actually excited to meet him. And they were surprised that they never met. And so then he gets invited up to go hang out with them at the house. And they have a nice, beautiful time. And so you can assume that Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski are having a good time here. Roman Polanski is not going to, diddle a kid or whatever he did and have to flee the country. He's going to get to stay married with Sharon Tate and have, that kid and everything. And then Leonardo is going to get cast in a Roman Polanski movie as the lead, and his career is going to come back, and Brad Pitt gets to come back with him, and it's all happily ever after. And that's why it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The movie goes into all these little things that feel kind of like fairy tale. And then at the very end, everyone lives happily ever after. They had problems the whole time, and now they're just magically everything perfectly fixed itself out of random chance, right? And no one got hurt, no one died in the big fight at the end. You're like, oh, I get it. And on the screen it pops up, Once Upon a Time, ... in Hollywood. And you realize you're like, oh, this is like an adult version of a fairy tale. That's what this movie was. And it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. And so, like, it kind of tells you in the title, but if you don't know that's what you're watching, and you're not just along to have a decent, a fun time, but you're like waiting for something serious to happen, you're not going to have fun. If you're just like, this is going to be fun, and it's going to be a fairy tale, and it's going to go on tangents, and like a lot of the, it's not vignettes, but like there's a whole like probably 30 minutes of like Leonardo DiCaprio like dealing with his like, am I a good actor? Am I not a good actor? Shit, I'm messing up my lines, on this TV show pilot I'm doing. And there's lots of stuff like that where like Margot Robbie is just like going to a movie theater and being like, oh, I guess I did do a good job in my movie. And so like that stuff, like if you're just talking about the plot of the movie, you could probably cut both of those half hours out. Now the movie's an hour and 40 minutes. You could cut a lot of other stuff out. And you could probably get this movie to like a trim, fast paced, like 70, 80, 90-minute movie. But that's not what Quentin Tarantino wanted to make. Quentin Tarantino he wanted to make this big, long thing that just kind of wanders and goes around and has fun and just goes, well, what if this happened? What if this happened? What if this happened? Wouldn't it be funny if this happened? And then the whole time you're kind of guessing, you're like, where is this going? What's it going to get to? And yeah, but it's a very fun movie if you just go in and you're just like, I want to have fun. So you've seen the movie basically now because I told you the whole thing. But watching how it happens is the fun part. I would recommend that you find a friend or someone like that and you invite them over or a group of friends and you have them watch this movie. You know what's going on. So maybe like when they're like, I don't know, this is boring, you're like, no, 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 don't take it too seriously. The reason like they had that whole scene, it's a flash forward in Brad Pitt's mind of him doing this whole thing and getting into a fight with Bruce Lee. Like it's just supposed to be fun little fantasy, but within the setting of like, just Hollywood, LA. So it's a very interesting little juxtaposition there. And yeah, I would recommend you watch this movie with a bunch of other people. It's on Hulu right now. It's how I watched it. You could get it on Fubo TV as well. Because you really want to use Fubo TV. Yeah, apparently critics gave it, like 85, 84, 7.6 on IMDb. Um, yeah, I would give it like an 80%, maybe a 76. Like you don't need to watch this movie. You know what I mean? It's not like a must see like Pulp Fiction or and even in Pulp Fiction, I didn't like the whole scene where Uma Thurman is like doing drugs and like overdoses on heroin or whatever. I thought that was like I don't care. I'm like boring. Um no, but I think if you watch like Inglorious Bastards, you need to watch that Reservoir Dogs, you need to watch that like the other Tarantino movies are like must watch. I haven't seen Jackie Brown yet. But like Django Unchained, you need to see that. It's incredible. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's fun. It's not a must need to see, right? It's not like in the same way with albums, right? Like I go, like you need to listen to Elephant by the White Stripes. You need to hear the first Arctic Monkeys record. You need to hear, the first two Royal Blood records. Um, this is more like a the fourth Cage the Elephant album. Like it's good. There's fun stuff in there. It's kind of got interesting things happening, but it's not like, oh my god, greatest record of all time. You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, like I can see most people not liking this movie. It was quaint, it was fun, it was light. It reminded me of the movie I just watched the night before, Fool's Paradise, which is Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as a mute man going into Hollywood, and Ken Jeong plays a failed, middleman in Hollywood, producer, publicist. That's what it is. And basically, what ends up happening is Ken Jeong, um, you know, is the biggest champion of him because he sees him as a money ticket to way to make money. But then at the end of the day, you know, they become friends, and he takes care of him. And then something happens, and Charlie Day thinks Ken Jeong died and got cremated. And that's another movie where it's like a little fantasy, like Hollywood kind of fairy tale. And he becomes famous and like has a wife and kids and does this whole thing. It's a good, kind of like parody. But then at the end, it just ends up being like him and Ken Jeong decide like they're going to be friends. And the whole movie Charlie Day, his character, couldn't talk. He's mute. He just got let out of a mental hospital, right? And couldn't speak and was highly suggestible. That's why like everyone was able to get him to do anything that they wanted. And the joke is that everyone's projecting what they think in like how they feel and what's going on with them. They project that onto him. But at the end of the movie, Ken Jeong says, "Hey man, I don't care about the career. I don't care about the money." He's like, "I thought you were dead. I thought you were gone. I love you, man. I'm always gonna love you. And you know, you're my friend." And to that, Charlie Day says the only time he talks in the movie, he goes, "I love you too." And it's very sweet. It ends like that. But the whole time, it's like little vignettes of Hollywood stuff. And so that's where it's like, ironically, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a very similar movie. It is like less jokes, but they both do have the same thing where it's like they're vignettes of just little Hollywood things that are almost like fairy tale caricatures and little fun, little silly, little whimsical little stories. But what ends up happening is, as the viewer, you're watching like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Fool's Paradise, and you're like, okay, but are these movies like gonna go really anywhere? And so for a lot of people, when you're taking that perspective, which I would most of the time, but I just happened to be in a different mood the last couple of nights. When you're watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a lot of people would probably go, like, oh, this is not, it's not, it's not, nothing's happening. Where's it going? I don't get where it's going. Like, what's the point? What's the plot? And then just at the end, all the little things that were set up were paid off in this big scene where Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt fight these people and kill them. And it's it's pretty funny, like just when it's happening, because you're like, oh, this was what the whole movie was. And so if you're someone who wants like a really like fast paced movie that gets straight to the point and like is really good, like a John Wick, yeah, this is not John Wick. It's not a modern, upbeat, fast paced comedy. It's not like the Royal Blood first two records of music, or a film. It's not, a peppy, it's not like a Fast and the Furious movie. It's very kind of meandering and just has fun and plays around with ideas in just kind of a way that's having fun. It's much more like a side project for a band. It feels like Quentin Tarantino wanted to do a side project where he just kind of like had fun, did something kind of silly and light, but also like kind of weird, and just kind of had some interesting moments stitched together. It really does feel like a series of interesting moments. And Fool's Paradise feels like the same thing. It's a series of interesting moments strung together over the course of what, probably like 2.5 hours. I think they have a similar runtime. Let me pull it up actually, because that is kind of a funny thing. Fool's Paradise. La da 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 da. My life ends away. It's just a fool's paradise. It's just a fool's paradise. It's just a fool's paradise. Anyhow, that's a really good Oingo Boingo song. Everyone should go listen to the first 4 Oingo Boingo records. You might not like some of them at first. I would go listen to Dead Man's Party, the 4th record, and I would really listen to that and a lot of that and just really get into it. And then I would go backwards and I would start at the first record. And then I'd go to the second record, and then I'd go to the third record. I would go 4, 1, 2, 3. But on the 4th record, Dead Man's Party, there's a song called Fool's Paradise. And I think if you listen to that, you're just going to have more fun watching Fool's Paradise. Apparently, Fool's Paradise, yeah, got like 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is funny because honestly, to me, it felt a lot like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the sense that it was like quaint and fun and like good. And just kind of says something sweet. Ironically, it's a very sweet movie about just like, being there for each other and being kind of like nice friends. And, it's actually funny. Fool's Paradise almost has the exact same thing as like, Leo and Brad Pitt in this movie with Ken Jeong and Charlie Day, where they're just kind of guys who've got some friction there, and one of them makes money working with the other, and the other makes and the other doesn't really care about what's going on, and you kind of got like this weird thing where one person really wants it super bad. In one movie that's Ken Jeong, in the other movie it's Leo, But you've got this interesting relationship with them in Hollywood, and then you've got a similar format of just little vignettes and them meandering around and doing things. And half the time you're like, is this really happening, or is it going to be a flashback? And you're just kind of looking, and you can tell the director's having fun. They're like doing homages to stuff, and you could tell like maybe like, oh, let's try this kind of shot, and like this set would be fun to have, and this would just be a fun scene. What if Brad Pitt, insisted that he could beat Bruce Lee in a fight, and then he kicked Bruce Lee's ass? Like you're like, that's pretty funny, and that's why he gets fired from a job he's working. Like it's just a funny little like kind of little pop out, but and I think it's kind of funny. I think it's indicative of the fact that like Hollywood, like I don't know, just I think it's the framing of how a movie is supposed to be perceived. See here, when people go, "Well, I didn't like it. It wasn't a fast movie." They go, "Well, yeah, you're not supposed to get it. It's Quentin Tarantino. You weren't ready for it yet. He gave you something you weren't even ready for." But then Fool's Paradise comes out last year, and it's 4 years later, and people are like, "Well, this is bad. It's behind the times. It's too artsy. It wasn't that funny." Um, but it's very quaint. It's not supposed to be like, not supposed to be, you know, it's not supposed to be old school. If you ever seen the movie Old School or Idiocracy, both starring Luke Wilson, arguably the superior of the Wilson brothers. Luke Wilson is the brother of Owen Wilson, who played Amakar Kachaya, and who played Mobius on Loki. But Owen Wilson is really good, but Luke Wilson has incredible movies. Like what he was picking in the early 2000s was really good. And he was cooking. So look at the Owen Wilson IMDb. Go listen to Fool's Paradise by Oingo Boingo. And yeah, I guess that's the thing is it's the framing. Because when people go, well, I didn't like Fool's Paradise, it was long winded and meandering and nothing really happened. It didn't have those cultural ties to historical events. So it didn't have that as a cop out of like, well, it's a historical, like, it's magical history. It's like historical fiction, but like magic fantasy. It's like historical fantasy. It doesn't have that angle, but really it is a historical fantasy because there isn't much that's like modern day in it. Most of it is like it could have been a movie that takes place like 70 years ago, but they just chose for it not to. I think if they would have put this in the past and this movie was supposed to take place in the 1930s, it would have been way better, like received by people. And I think even me, I would have like been like, you know what, I like it. People would give it more slack, give it more credit. They'd be like, oh, it's supposed to be hokey and like not like super tight. Um, and the script can kind of meander and just like really lean in on like big moments where Ken Jeong is just like, I'm sad. Don't you see I'm sad? Like, dude, I'm sad. Dude, I'm sad. Like, oh my god, like why can't I like get this career going? Oh my god, like I really need this to happen. There's a lot of that. And I feel like if you threw it in the 40s or 50s, then I think it would have played better. I think it would have been funnier. The modern social commentary, I think, was okay, but I think the movie would have benefited from being taking place in the past, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Likewise, if you put Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and you made it like set in modern day, oh, I think that Rotten Tomato drops a lot. And if you didn't have the Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski, and like if you didn't know what was supposed to happen, which was those people were supposed to not kill, try and kill Brad Pitt, but instead they were supposed to go and kill Margot Robbie, who was pregnant, and they were supposed to go, and like murder the people in the house. And so I think if you took that away, right? Let's think about it. I think if you took that away, you took that element away, you take away the fact that it's set in the past, and you just have a guy who's a stunt double and he goes and confronts these weird hippie people, and then kind of like receding acting career guy goes to Italy to do Italian movies and then comes back and they fight in some people who did a home invasion who were like weird druggy people. Like you could have done the same movie right now, but you could do it with like homeless people and stuff. And I just don't think it would hit. I just don't think it would hit. And I'm not saying like it wouldn't hit with audiences. It wouldn't hit with me. Like it hit with me, this movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It works because there is the element of like nostalgia. It's back then. It's kind of fun and quaint to see like the different things and how they're different, but really how they're the same. And how are they going to do what happened in movie, in real life in the movie, or are they going to twist it? And what's that going to look like? And like, why do we keep following Margot Robbie? Is it just so that we are like reminded that she's here in the movie? Because nothing happens with her character. Nothing happens with her character. Nothing happens with Roman Polanski. So anytime they cut to them, it's like, is it just because she's a big name and you want to like cut to her because she's famous? I don't know. I don't know if there's any of her feet in this movie either, which is a real big disservice to the movie. I think Margot Robbie's feet need to be in every movie that Quentin Tarantino directs. Yeah, so it's very sad, and they didn't put her feet. But I think Charlie Day's feet are in Fool's Paradise. So if you want to see Charlie Day's feet, let's go to Wiki Feet. We're going to Wiki Feet real quick. I want to wrap this up, but Wiki Feet needs you. Wiki Feet, Margot Robbie. Let's go to WikiFeet. For those of you who are unfamiliar with WikiFeet, WikiFeet is a website that ranks celebrity feet. They have every single photo of every red carpet thing, anything that's ever been done with an actress or actor, in which their feet are exposed, and they rate how hot their feet are, how gorgeous their feet are. And let's get a look. Margot Robbie has a 5 out of 5. I have no clue what ratings are relevant for feet. Apparently, she has an 8.5 US shoe size. I'm assuming it's women's. Her birth date is August 2nd, 1990, in Australia. Oh, here we go. So, almost everyone, I would say, was at 7 out of 8. Let's do some math. 72 out of 84. Those are both divisible by 12. 7 out of 8. So 7/8. 1/7 is 14%. So 86% of people said Margot Robbie has 5 out of 5 stars on her feet. Now, I'm going to be quite curious to see. Oh, can I? Quite curious to compare Charlie Day's ranking. Charlie Day. Not Charlie XCS. XCX. Charlie Day. Charlie. Do I not know how to spell Charlie? Does Charlie Day not have a wiki feed? Is that even his name? Charlie Day. Why is Charlie Day not on wiki feet? Wait a minute. Charlie Day wiki feet. Oh, here we go. Wiki feet men. It's a separate wiki feet. Charlie Day, in fact, has a 4.71 out of 5 stars on his wiki feet. Now, oh, this feels gross. This feels gay. This feels awe. This feels like disturbing. Because it's just dudes' feet. And they're like, look at Paul Rudd shirtless and his feet. Look at Jake Gyllenhaal. He's shirtless and he's got his feet out. Chris Evans' feet. Yeah, I don't really care about that. Let's go to Wiki Feet Women. Oh my God. What even is this? Who's looking at feet? How did we end up on feet? What even is this? Why are we in the feet zone? I don't even know these people. Well, shocker. The higher rated movie has the people with better feet in it. I just take a note, Hollywood producers. If you want your movie to do well, put high-ranked wiki feet people in it. Find people who rank highly in all the different demographics and their 4-quadrant appeal. Brad Pitt, everyone likes him. Dudes like him. Chicks like him. Ugly dudes, handsome dudes, ugly chicks, pretty chicks. Same with Leo. Classic. Unimpeachable. Margot Robbie. Everyone loves her. And as she's getting older, she's less threatening to older women. So, and they're like, oh, look, she's got crow's feet now. Okay, I don't think she has crow's feet. I have no clue what crow's feet even is. I have an idea. Actually, take that back. I have an idea of what crow's feet is. I'm assuming it's like wrinkles on like the corner of your eyes and that kind of thing. Anyway, guys, this has been a 1 hour straight podcast on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Fool's Paradise, a compare and contrast essay. What worked and what didn't work? Well, both movies equally work and don't work, but the added element of having the big name stars Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, having the historical fantasy element of the different characters and throwing those big names and things that you're familiar with already and doing different versions of them and playing off that. That really just adds to the charm. And both these movies are trying to be really charming. The most charming movie you've never seen. The most charming movie that you still hate. Thinking of a clickbait title for the second video. But I'm going to break this into 2 podcasts. But maybe we're going to break it into 3. Let's see. How long would it need to be? So I break these up at 25 minutes apiece. So 50, so an hour and 15 minutes. If I do another 15 minutes of podcasting here, which who knows, maybe we will. Maybe we will. This makes it 3 podcasts. Okay, you hear that? You hear that, dear viewer? Now, if I film 7 podcasts a day, times 5 days a week, that's 35 podcasts a week. And I start releasing them and recording them a week in advance. See, right now, I'm watching this on February 4th is when I watched it. It's February 5th. And it's already 11 a.m. Oh my God, I need to go drink an energy drink and then fight a bear. I worked out yesterday. I had a good time doing that. No, it's interesting. No, but I genuinely do want to break down the fact that there is something to it. You put Brad Pitt, you put Leonardo DiCaprio, you put Margot Robbie in it, you put Austin Butler, you put, Sydney Sweeney. You have one of the greatest directors of all time, the most iconic, the most known, the most appreciated, and you throw them in a movie, and you throw it in the past, and there's an element of fantasy, and there's an element of fun, and you're just also like an element of like, what's Quentin Tarantino doing, and like, how much is he gonna fuck with us as the audience, and versus how much is are we gonna get to like fuck around together? This is a movie that's fucking with you more than you're fucking together, right? In the sense that like you're not in on the joke's on you, right? It feels like Quentin Tarantino, to a certain point, you're laughing with him, and another point, he's laughing at you. This is one of those movies where you're like, the fun of it is the fact that it's made by Quentin Tarantino. I think if Fool's Paradise was not directed by Charlie Day and was directed by oh my God, David Fincher. Also, The Killer with Michael Fassbender. That movie was awful. It's the same thing as these two, though. And the only thing that redeems it, it's a meandering movie. It's supposed to kind of be, you're like interested in like what's just even happening in the structure of the movie. It's supposed to be captivating and engaging to you, and just the character flaws, not even the character flaws, but the untrustworthy narration, and the lens through which you're seeing things almost feels a little bit fantastical. In a similar way that when you're watching like a John Wick movie or a Crank movie, Crank, those movies are great, by the way. Watch those, starring oh my God, Jason Statham. But likewise, there's an element where you're kind of sitting there and you're like, is this really supposed to be happening? You know what I mean? Or am I supposed to like be coming along on a journey with someone who's an untrustworthy narrator? And so The Killer, starring Michael Fassbender, has this part where basically he starts the movie. He's like, I'm super cool. I'm super badass. And he's listening to the Smiths. And you're like thinking it's supposed to be a joke, like at first. And it is actually funny the way it's cut. They do all these comedy cuts. And you're trying to like, and I'm sitting there like, oh, this is funny. Like they'll say something really serious and then cut to something like really stupid or silly. Or like him falling down or like bonking his head. I don't think he literally does that exact thing. But it's that concept of like, oh, it's just super cool, I'm super badass, then cut, boom, owie, zowie. Like, you're like, okay, that's how you would shoot a comedy, and that's how you would, like, edit a comedy. It feels like here's what it is, and most of the movie is an overdub of him talking, of Michael Fassbender talking to the viewer of the movie. And what's so funny is it feels like someone shot a comedy. They color graded it to make it look like a bad, boring action movie, like a desaturated Zack Snyder movie. And then the editor said, we're still going to make it a comedy. And then when they got to the edit bay, they said, let's make it serious. Let's make this like impactful and serious. So let's make it a dark comedy. where you can't tell if it's supposed to be funny or if it's supposed to be real and raw and passionate and passionate and impassioned, not impassioned. And you're like, what's happening? What's even going on right now? You're like, what is this movie? What is friggin' The Killer? And I think it's bad. I think it didn't work. You basically, what you want to do with that movie is watch the first like 20 minutes or whatever, where he's like, look at me, I'm setting up to go snipe this guy in the building across from me, and I'm manning my station in this abandoned building, and I have a sniper rifle, and I'm gonna go kill him because I'm a killer. I'm the killer. David Fincher made this movie, or whoever made it, and I'm the killer. I'm the killer. I'm the killer. I watched it like 2 months ago, but it stuck with me because I got so annoyed with it. And it does the thing where it meanders and has these little vignettes and kind of has a little bit of a through line where it's an interesting, unreliable protagonist and narrator, and the director, you can't really trust them, and if they're playing with you too. So it still has that thing where you're like, the director is playing with me, and we're also playing with the director. The director is joking around with me, but also the director's laughing at me. I'm laughing together with the director versus, as I've explained numerous times now. By this point, you've already explained this numerous times in the last 5 minutes. You're wondering, when's he going to stop explaining that? Wow. Why is he suddenly British? I do not understand why Lord Farrell would be speaking in such a tongue. I do not understand this. It's Lord Farrell. How dare they? How dare they? How dare they? Do I need to buy a plot of land in a random country so I can technically be Lord Farrell? Oh, you hear that? Lord Connor Farrell. Oh God, that is a good one. I'm gonna Google that. How to and I know they've got the British company that does it, or the Scottish. How to become a lord. Oh my God. Okay, how to become a lord. Here we go. So can I use this on official documents, business documents, that kind of thing? Lord Farrell could purchase the title of Lord or Baron for the Principality of Sealand for a little bit of scratch. Micronation with an ambiguous recognition from a major currency. You may want to check out the Wiki page. Lord. How do I become a lord? There's like a 14-year-old Reddit thing. Huh. How do I, yeah. It's still possible to become an American lord in the sense they are a genuine lord and were born in America. Let's see. How to become a lord in America. Genuine titles. Possible, maybe no such title as an American lordship, yet is still possible to become an American lord in the sense that they are a genuine lord and were born in America. One of the classic ways for American men and women to acquire noble ranks and title was to marry into the aristocratic families of Europe. It's a straightforward process. Well, call me Lord Farrell. Lord Farrell. Though the American heathens may not recognize my lordship, it is true. No, in The Killer, though, you do want to go to the part where, basically, the second vignette, or the third one. Oh, no, so the whole first scene is him going like, I'm going to go kill these people. I'm cool. I'm badass. I'm Michael Fassbender. I played Magneto. Cool. And he goes to kill this guy, and he like makes a rookie mistake. Like he has a clear shot at the guy, and then he's too busy like narrating how cool he is while listening to the fucking Smiths. That he accidentally shoots the prostitute that the guy has over, and then doesn't shoot the big rich guy in his Paris penthouse. And then Michael Fassbender basically, since he fucking sucks and failed at the job, the person who hired the hit, which is some random guy in New York who was like a hedge fund guy, he basically is like, okay, well, let's kill Michael Fassbender because he fucked up the hit. I don't want any loose ends. I want them tracing it back to me. So Michael Fassbender's like, oh my god, the guys they sent to kill me ended up fucking up my girlfriend in the Dominican Republic. I must get revenge. And so he goes to kill this guy who's like a big like meathead guy who's on steroids, and has a pit bull in his front yard. He goes to kill that guy. That guy lives in Florida, and there's a really fucking cool action sequence, and that's amazing. Watch that. Then he just talks to Tilda Swinton, not Charlize Theron, but he goes and talks to Tilda Swinton, and she's like, "But look at me, I'm poor and sad, and don't kill me." And then she's about to stab him, and then he shoots her, and that's pretty much all that happens. The camera's having difficulty focusing. I'm gonna look right in the camera. Camera, focus. Focus, time to focus. Focus for me. All these times, right? No, focus on me. This is 3 videos on 3 different movies, though. This is 3 podcasts on 3 different movies. You weren't expecting this right now. That's what's happening. That's rock and roll, baby. You ain't know what's happening with rock and roll. You never see rock and roll. You might be thinking this man's a little unhinged. He's a little unhinged. Where's he going? Where's he not going? Where's he going? Where's he not going? Where's he going? Where's he not going? I don't know. Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas to you. And a happy new year. Happy birthday to you. The Killer is not a good movie. It meanders. Yeah, so I would say these are 3 different levels of the same thing. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the best. It doesn't lose you. It goes on a thing, and it does its own thing, but it doesn't lose you, and you actually are rewarded at the end with a big bang, and that's really good. Fool's Paradise rewards you and is good, but then at the end, it kind of doesn't give you anything, and it actually slows down and just abruptly ends, and you're like, oh. The Killer is the worst because it starts with him fucking something up and being funny, and like you think it's a dark comedy, and then it just gets him being like, how dare they come after me? And he slowly kills people in the most lame, boring, clinical ways possible, and you know he's going to kill them. So there's no suspense, there's no reason to watch him. He just does actions in a sequence. It's so boring. And he keeps going like, you can't feel. You can't feel. Feeling is feeling. And he keeps narrating to himself, and it's like really like not compelling or interesting. It's supposed to be like edgy. I think it's like edginess for people with an IQ under like 84. Or if you're like really tired or you got hit in the head a lot and you have a lot of head trauma, you might think it's edgy and cool and deep. But yeah, he's just like, dude, you gotta be cool and edgy. And he keeps doing that, and it's like super annoying. Super annoying. We're gonna edit this. I'm calling this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Fool's Paradise. The Killer. Dude, this movie sucks. Wait, let's do the little intro clip. No! The Killer does not hold up. The Killer starring Michael Fassbender is awful. Okay? It's a bad movie. It is a bad movie. It sucks. It is similar to Fool's Paradise by Charlie Day, which is slightly better than that, but different. And then it really is most directly compared to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is substantially better as a movie. It's equally as, fantastical and didn't happen, and untrustworthy narrator, and kind of meanders through a lot of different little fantasy little ideas like what if, except the what ifs in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are better, and it ends with a really good ending where there's a fight scene. Fool's Paradise starring Charlie Day isn't set in the past, is less fantastical, but it still has an untrustworthy narrator and some of that element, and so it ends up being more compelling, but it doesn't have a bang at the end. So it definitely is not nearly as good as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But The Killer is the worst among them because it seems incredible for the first 10 minutes once it actually kicks into gear, but then it immediately slows down into boring procedural. It's almost like watching someone at the DMV who happens to, like, if the DMV happened to just kill people casually, but not even casually, like they're so bored of it, they're just like, okay, like what? And it's like stab you and cut your throat. Like what? Is the DMV, like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, I don't care. I work at the DMV. What? No, seriously, what? I work at the DMV. I don't care. I don't care. That's what The Killer feels like, straight up. It straight up feels like, oh, yeah. And then, so it starts good, though. It starts good with this big scene. It sounds like a dark comedy. It's funny. But then it gets to the point where you're just sitting there And you finally slog through enough of the movie. He has a big fight scene in the middle that's incredible. That's worth watching, like so good. And then just horrible, boring procedural DMV. Nah, nah. And then even the end, he goes to confront the guy who did the whole thing. Who like hired him for the hit, and then hired the people to go kill his girlfriend and kill him and get revenge when he failed his hit. The people who tried to kill him, this guy who paid for all that to happen, he goes to his high rise in New York and he just sneaks into his apartment. He's like, "Hello there. I followed you at Equinox. You did not have the right paperwork. I'm going to kill you." And the guy goes, "What? Please, don't kill me. You have so much gefilte fish to eat for the rest of my life. How dare you kill me? No! I'm like a sweet little, less entertaining Larry David. No, don't kill me. Oh, God. I should never trust the Goyim." I'm Jewish, by the way, but even me, I was like, you got some, like, kind of curmudgeon-y, wimpy, like, Jewish hedge fund dude, and Michael Fassbender is wearing, like, a bucket hat and a friggin', like, Hawaiian shirt, and he's like, "Yo, dude, like, you tried to kill me? Like, why do you try and kill me?" And the other guy just goes, "Well, I didn't mean to. I don't know. They said that's how you do insurance. If the shit doesn't fail, I could pay an extra 20,000 and it would go away. I didn't know. I thought they meant they would make it so they couldn't trace it back to me. Why they're gonna kill your Dominican girlfriend?" Ah. And then he's like, "Fine." And he walks away. That's the whole movie. That's the whole movie. That movie sucks. The movie sucks. Don't watch The Killer. Watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Or watch John Wick. Watch Crank. Watch Crank, starring Jason Statham. That is a much better action, high-paced kind of movie. Watch Blade. Blade's still a little more takes its time with stuff. And it's a little dated now. Not super dated, but like, it's not a super fast-paced movie. Morbius. Morbius starring Jared Leto. Morbius is an incredible, incredible film. It's the greatest movie of all time, but it's incredible, especially compared to The Killer. Like, generally, and this is the thing, people are like, Morbius is bad. And you're sitting there like, Morbius is a good movie. It's not the greatest movie of all time. It's a good movie. It's an aggressively 7 out of 10 movie. The Killer is like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. It's like a 4. It's not a good movie. It's a bad movie. You get this goes like below a 5, it's bad. It's genuinely bad. Above a 5, it goes from like okay at 6 to 7, good. 8 is like great. 9 is like holy cow, and 10 is like the greatest movie ever. Like one of the greatest movies of all time. Morbius is just good. It's a good movie. I like it. I have fun watching it. Do I see where it could easily be better? Yeah, sure. But it's still good. Anything that's not perfect 10 out of 10 can be better. The Killer is like so below the line of good. It's not enjoyable. It like barely has any. It has a redeeming scene or two. It has 2 redeeming scenes out of like 30 scenes in the whole movie. The rest are unbearably bad. And then there's 2 things that are great. But it doesn't matter if you have 2 great scenes if the whole movie overall is still mind-numbingly awful. So, The Killer, not a good movie. Morbius, good movie. Great movie, depends if you're in the mood for it. Okay movie, if you're in a different mood. That's what I'm saying. I think Morbius is like a 7, but if you're in a really good mood for it could go up to an 8. If you're in not a good mood for it could go down to a 6. But it's not going to a 3 or 4. And The Killer by David Fincher at best is a 5, at worst is a 3. Right? It's at that 4. It has that, up or down of 1. Kind of 1 out of 10. It can go up by 1 or it can go down by 1. But that movie is bad. The Killer is a bad movie. Fool's Paradise is probably a 5 out of 10. At points, it's a 6 and it's enjoyable and good, and then it goes down to like a 4. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I would say, is a 7, like Morbius. Um, it's more ambitious and it has a higher variation, but I would say the best of this type of movie where it kind of goes through a bunch of little vignettes and kind of is like fantastical, magical realism is After Hours by Martin Scorsese. After Hours by Martin Scorsese. I'm pulling that up. You guys need to watch this. After Hours by Martin Scorsese. I don't want to just leave you with like, that sucks. This is shit. Don't watch anything. No, After Hours by Martin Scorsese is on the Roku channel for free, and it's on Tubi for free. After Hours is such a good movie, and it's so funny because I just started watching the first time. Um, Growing up, my dad had a bunch of movies downloaded to a hard drive. And whenever we turn on the TV to watch a movie, for the last like 20 years of my life, the first thing that would pop up that was downloaded to the hard drive, starting with A, alphabetically going, was After Hours. And I just saw this woman, the poster for the movie, these nails, woman's nails, like about a pinch the head of our main character. And there's a clock that's like ticking, ticking, ticking. And I thought it might have been a horror movie. And it's just so funny because the movie just like kind of like is just happening the same way all these movies are just kind of happening. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's just kind of happening when the movie starts out. Fool's Paradise is just kind of happening. The Killer is just kind of happening. That's all that's happening with these movies. After Hours is the exact same thing for the first 20 minutes, and then you go, is it going to pick up? And you blink, and then you're like, holy shit, somehow it went from like 0 to like 110 out of 10, and you're like, what's happening? And it keeps that pace for the next like 60 minutes of the movie, and you're just like dumbfounded. You're like, what just happened here? But it follows that exact same template. This is a movie that's an hour and 40 minutes that does not feel like it. The Killer is probably like 2 hours, but feels like 8. Fool's Paradise is like an hour and a half, but feels like 2 or 3. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's 3 hours and feels like it. After Hours feels like 30 minutes. And it feels like the first 20 minutes feels like the first 20 minutes of the movie. And the next hour and 20 feels like 10 minutes. It's like insane. It feels like your body is on drugs. Watch After Hours by Martin Scorsese. And that's the funny thing too. You're going to start watching it and you're going to be like, yeah, nothing's really happening. I guess, what's that? It's like, that's kind of weird. And there's like going to be 4 or 5 things that kind of like pull you slightly. You're slightly going to feel something. You're slightly going to be like, huh, and slight, huh. You're going to go, huh, a lot. But then it flips from like a sea of these little hums to like, boom, boom, you're in it. And I think another movie that tries to do this is Eyes Wide Shut. Eyes Wide Shut to me seems like a really bad ripoff of After Hours. It's a really bad version of After Hours. And I think if you look at all these kind of movies in this like template and this formula of this like meandering kind of movie, like I think that's where you get really clear that's like, okay, After Hours is the best. Then it's After Hours is like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 movie. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's like a 7. Fool's Paradise is like a 5. The Killer is like a 4. And like I think if you really like watch all of those movies in that order that I'm talking about, right? If you watch After Hours and then you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you're gonna be like, okay, After Hours was really good. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's pretty good. But it's like fine. A little long. Could have been streamlined a little bit. I didn't need to see any scenes with Sharon Tate. Nothing happened there. Why did we watch that? And then you're going to watch Fool's Paradise and be like, yeah, it's a little more charming than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but definitely doesn't work as good as a film. Like, clearly doesn't. Just doesn't click. And then you're going to watch The Killer and you're going to be like, oh, I guess I'll like try and enjoy it. And then like it's just gonna be like just like DMV, 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 I'm at the DMV. Then really cool fight scene and then DMV, DMV. And literally that's the thing with these movies, the problem they can have that I think After Hours doesn't have is how to have good pacing. See, After Hours at the beginning is like super like slow and kind of like not much feels like it's happening. But then it consistently goes up and gets more and 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 it just ends like, oh my God, that was a big journey we went on. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood kind of feels like it's going up, and then it kind of feels like it's going down, and then it goes up again a little, but then it kind of like, it doesn't have a consistent upward trajectory. It doesn't really feel like it has a clear, this is where we're going and I'm on board. You kind of don't really know what you're watching for way too long, in my opinion. After Hours, you don't know what you're watching at first, but then very quickly you're like, oh, this is cool. I know exactly what I'm watching. This is cool. Wait, what's going to happen? And then it just like continues and continues and continues and snowballs and snowballs. Fool's Paradise starts big and then just goes down. It's the opposite of After Hours. And so that's what really hurts that movie. And then The Killer is the worst of them because it kind of like slightly bumps and then it goes down, 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 up for a second and then right back down. And then it goes even lower. So I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some movies don't do this, but I think you need as a movie, like if you're going to be one of these movies with little vignettes and things, you have to build. It has to get more rewarding the deeper you get. And not only does it have to be like, oh, I'm glad I paid attention for the first parts, but most importantly, like, this is objectively cooler shit to watch now that I'm at the end of the movie. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on After Hours, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Fool's Paradise, and The Killer. Watch After Hours, watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You don't need to watch Fool's Paradise or The Killer. Fool's Paradise, watch like the first half hour. It doesn't go anywhere after that. And then The Killer, just watch the first like sequence before he fucks up. And then once he fucks up, you can just fast forward straight to him in Florida fighting this dude in his house. And it's a really good fight scene. But outside of that, you don't need to watch either film. But watch After Hours, really good. It's on Tubi, it's on Roku channel. Go watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was on Hulu. But yeah, thank you. This is, some episodes talking about some films, a little bit of a different thing here. But I assume that you guys probably want to hear about that too. This is what Gen Z thinks about it. This is more just what I think about it. I think boomers are going to like After Hours. I think boomers are going to like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think boomers are going to like The Killer, and I don't think they're going to like Fool's Paradise. I think Gen Z will like, not like After Hours. They'll like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and they'll like Fool's Paradise, and they might like The Killer just because it's got like enough of like cool, like it's aesthetic. Yeah. So definitely go check that out. Go send this video to a friend. Like, send this series of podcasts to a friend. Send them, starting with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then you'll hear how it works into Fool's Paradise, and then you'll hear how it goes to The Killer, and you'll go on that whole journey. Or just get your friends over and watch After Hours. I would not invite friends over for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I said that in a prior podcast that I would, like half an hour ago in my time, maybe an hour ago. But I wouldn't. I would play it safe. I would play it safe. There you go. Well, right now, I'm doing a video right after this on Cage Elephant's latest album, Social Cues. They have a new album coming out probably this year, but go listen to that review on Social Cues. That is going to be fun. I'm going to rip it a new one. Hint, it's okay. It's aggressively okay. Cage Elephant made one of the two greatest rock records of all time and then a really good pop record with Melophobia, and then they made a extremely inoffensive, unremarkable, but cute and good pop record with Tell Me I'm Pretty, and then they made Social Cues, which is a different version of the same unremarkable thing, except it's less catchy than Tell Me I'm Pretty. Anyways, go watch the video on Social Cues, because I'm going to rip it a new one. Anyways, go listen to the podcast on Social Cues for you audio listeners, you audio monkeys. I know you're there. Anyways, go do that within the next 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did you do it? Did you go? See you there. Rock on.